rage, very angry, right? It's very, very rough, kind of coarse, disturbed, almost, when you're really enraged, almost insane. It can be like temporarily, kind of can't think clearly at all, can't think straight, totally have all kinds of ridiculous ideas, right? So being in a really, and then when we're very angry, we can see how we're not happy. Everyone around us feels uncomfortable, and leads us into doing a lot of things that we later will regret, right? So start with very obvious, easy to identify kind of destructive emotions, and then look at more and more subtle ones, very subtle ones. But gradually identifying destructive emotions, and then identifying positive emotions. So with positive emotions, again, we're doing very obvious, easy to identify ones, like, when we really have, probably most of us happens to some point in our life when we're growing up, we're sick of staying at home, sick of being around our parents, we want to get out on our own, but then we, go away to college, or go away have our first job somewhere else, or go stay with some relative or friend somewhere else, and then after a few months we really miss our parents. We realize like how nice it was to have mom's home cooked meals and have dad asking us about every day, and not have to worry about the rent, not have to worry about transportation, not have to worry about cooking or shopping or cleaning, have all these things taken care of. And then, that sense of gratitude, gratitude for your parents, and real, out of a gratitude, real sense of like affection for them, right? It's a very positive state of mind. It's easy to identify. Or just, maybe you see a friend suffering, or your parents suffering, or someone and just really, really genuinely being concerned about them, right? Having a selfless sense of, I wish I could do something to help them. What can I do to help that person? It's a very positive state of mind. So again, identify, very easy to see positive states of mind, and then more and more subtle positive states. Okay, so these two things in consciousness, basically, there's many other things, of course, but basically it's learning to control our mind by learning to focus our mind on a chosen object, and then also by learning to distinguish between destructive and constructive states of positive, negative and positive states of mind. So let's look at the actual text now on page 34 in the book. Those who wish to guard their practice, so this means your spiritual practice, your meditation practice, or your Dharma practice. Those who wish to guard their practice should very attentively guard their minds. For those who do not guard their minds will be unable to guard their practice. Right? So basically, the basis of our spiritual practice is our mind. Right? It's not our body, it's not our speech, it's looking at our mind. Right? So if we want to generate a spiritual practice, the main thing is to guard our mind. Right? So then, what does it mean to guard our mind? And how do we guard our mind? So that's what he's going to describe. In the second chapter, in this world, unsubdued and crazed elephants are incapable of causing such harms as the miseries of the deepest hell, which can be caused by the unleashed elephant of my mind. So here, of course, you have to think, he's speaking in terms of not just this life, but past and future lives. And not only past and future lives, of course, rebirth from life to life. And then, and he's assuming we already know that when you take rebirth, you're not always necessarily rebirth as a human, reborn as a human being. There are 6 realms in samsara into which we can take rebirth, right? So he mentions hell here. So he's starting at the bottom. Hell is the lowest, lowest in the sense that there's the most suffering, right? And it's the most difficult to practice Dharma. Maybe most difficult to practice Dharma, but maybe not most difficult, but very difficult. But those are most suffering in hell. Then slightly less suffering is hungry ghosts. It's these kind of spirits that are qualified by being plagued by like jealousy and craving for objects of attachment. So they take rebirth primarily through miserliness. So they're called hungry ghosts or pretas. And then the slightly less suffering is animal lives. So animals we can see around us. So these are the three lower states, three lower rebirths in samsara. So we take those rebirths through the force of negative karma. And then there's three higher rebirths, or higher states, is human beings, demigods, and gods, which take rebirth all through the force of positive karma. But he's saying whatever kind of rebirth in whatever of those states that kind of rebirth is propelled by forces in your mind, not things outside of you. So even if you meet a crazed elephant in this life, you go in the jungle and there's a huge elephant and it's mating season, and he's just like totally crazy with lust and fighting with the other male elephants to mate with the female elephants, and you happen to just come to that scene, and it's very dangerous, right? The elephant, the worst he can do is trample you to death. But that's pretty bad. But compared to taking rebirth in hell, it's nothing. Not much suffering. Just dying. Taking rebirth in hell means burning, freezing, being cut, fighting, like terrible physical pain, and also terrible mental suffering for thousands and thousands of years. That is caused by your mind. Right? So what he's saying here, in this world, unsubdued and crazed elephants are incapable of causing such harms as the miseries of the deepest hell. So even, this crazed elephants, or even, other people, terrorists, or, bandits, or just, bad politicians, they can cause us a lot of suffering in this life. But compared to, the negative karma that we can create if we don't control our mind, which throws us into rebirth as an animal, or hungry ghosts or hell being, that is much worse, right? So those crazed elephants and other things that can harm us in this life, they can't cause us anywhere near the kind of harm that we can cause ourselves by an uncontrolled mind, right? So are incapable of causing such harms as the miseries of the deepest hell, which can be caused by the unleashed elephant of my mind, right? So if we don't subdue our mind, if we don't learn to distinguish negative and positive emotions and put energy into generating positive states of mind and abandoning anger and other negative states of mind, then we receive so much harm. And then verse 3, however, if the elephant of my mind is firmly bound on all sides by the rope of mindfulness, all fears will cease to exist and all virtues will come into my hand. So conversely, just as our mind can be extremely destructive, our mind can also be incredibly constructive and positive. So if we learn to control our mind well, and abandon anger and hatred and jealousy and greed and craving attachment, and learn to generate contentment, concern for others, kindness, patience, then every virtue can come into our hands. Then we can eliminate the possibility of suffering in this life, the possibility of suffering in this life, and we can just progress from happiness to happiness to happiness, up to a state of liberation from samsara, whereby we experience no more suffering, and up to the state of full enlightenment, whereby we have incredible bliss and joy all the time, and we just spontaneously, automatically, and continuously engage in countless deeds to benefit others. So incredible, happy states of mind we can also achieve. It kind of makes sense, when you think of just on a kind of more ordinary way of reasoning, sometimes, when we read the news, or especially when we look at the news, we hear a lot of bad things happening, terrible things people do, all the time. When we look at history, we can remember, Hitler and Genghis Khan, and these great murderers, and people totally abusing power and harming people who, with great intelligence, use their intelligence to harm a lot of people. But what that means also is conversely that intelligence is an extremely powerful thing, right? So if it's not combined with a good heart, but rather it's combined with malevolent intentions, which is selfishness and greed and not caring about others, and even hatred towards others, then it can be incredibly destructive. But that same intelligence, if it's combined with a really good heart and real sincere concern about others, and selfless concern about others, and a real sincere wish to benefit people, it can also be incredibly powerful and bring incredible benefit to the world. Right? So this is basically the idea is this: our mind has this incredible power. Right? If we don't learn to use it in a good way, then by past habituation, there's a big danger we use it in a very bad way. It becomes very destructive for us. So we have to learn how to use our mind well, right? In order to bring happiness to others, bring happiness to ourselves, and bring happiness to others. Okay. So he's saying the first thing here is mindfulness. Learn about mindfulness, right? Verse 3 again. However, if the elephant of my mind is firmly bound on all sides with the rope of mindfulness. So the idea here is like, that like, well, our mind, if we don't do anything to try to control it, for many of us, there's all kinds of like distracting kind of random forces that, you know, can cause us to be very kind at sometimes and very mean at other times. But if we control our mind with the rope of mindfulness, so the idea is like, if you want to control an elephant, I guess you have a big stake or a big tree and you tie it to the tree, right? So that it can't just go anywhere it likes. Of course, in the case of an elephant these days, that's considered like abusive, right? It's not a very kind way to treat an elephant. But our mind is different, right? Because our mind is our mind. It's not like some other person that we're doing something to. It's learning to control our own mind to benefit ourselves and others. So the idea is like mindfulness is the force by which we intentionally focus our attention. We intentionally or consciously focus our attention on an object, right? So like, you know, when we're reading, we have to keep our attention focused on the book. If we're listening to someone else talk, we have to focus our attention on what they're saying. If we're doing something at work or at home, like if we're cooking a meal at home, we have to focus our attention on, you know, boiling the water and chopping the vegetables and, you know, cleaning the rice and all the things that have to do with that. So whatever we're doing, to do it effectively, we need to focus our attention on that rather than just have our attention just going all over the place. So the analogy here is like binding our mind is like this crazy elephant, and with the rope of mindfulness, this practice of keeping our attention focused, holding it to the object, whatever it is that we need to pay attention to at that time. So if we tie our mind with the rope of mindfulness, then we can, all fears will cease to exist. So the fear he mentioned above was the fear of being reborn in hell, right? So how can we eliminate the fear of being reborn in hell, or being reborn as an animal, or being reborn in like, you know, a terrible place, and even as a human? There's like famine and war and fighting. Basically, by generating mindfulness, then we become mindful of what kind of actions we're engaging in. If the actions we're engaging in are virtuous, and thereby the cause of happiness and happy rebirths, or they're non-virtuous, and thereby they're the cause of our own future suffering and negative rebirths. So if we generate good mindfulness, then we can refrain from engaging in any non-virtuous actions, like in the future, and whatever negative karma we've created in the past, we can purify. And thereby we can eliminate the fear that we'll take rebirth in hell, or another kind of unfortunate circumstance, and another suffering situation, because we can eliminate the causes for that. Everything arises through causes and conditions. Nothing is determined by God or just happens totally randomly. Everything arises from its own particular uncommon set of causes and conditions. Right? Like the plastic chairs at the back of the room that are here in the room, the cloth here on the throne, or the wooden cabinets. We can't just like throw some bean seeds down there and those will just grow up out of like, you know, like Jack and the Beanstalk or something. Or you can't just like, I don't know, take a pile of sand and put it there and expect to get a cabinet. You have to have wood. You have to get wood and then cut it and glue it together and blah, blah, blah. And for the cloth, you have to have that kind of material and, you know, weave it into thread and then have threads and then weave it with a certain pattern and dye it. Like everything that exists, the external physical things, and also experiences that we have, feelings that we have, feelings of pleasure or pain, they all arise from their own particular set of causes and conditions. Right? So the main practice of becoming mindful is becoming mindful of our own karma. What kind of karma are we creating? Right? Because whatever kind of karma we create, that's what kind of experience we're going to have in the future. So if we eliminate harming others and we maximize benefiting others, then we eliminate the fear of us experiencing the result of harming others in the future, because we don't create the cause. Right? If we eliminate the cause, then the result cannot manifest. Right? So this is like mindfulness. This is mindfulness. I mean, one kind of mindfulness is mindfulness of karma. Mindfulness of what kind of actions are we creating, what kind of karma are we creating. Which comes back to our motivation. Which is why at the beginning of the session, we spend time generating positive motivation. Which is a practice we should do every day, so that all of our actions become virtuous. Because whether actions are virtuous or not virtuous primarily depends on motivation. Why are we doing it? What is the purpose? What's our intention? Okay, so let's look at, so those first three verses kind of go together. Basically they're talking about the pros and cons of guarding alertness. Right? This chapter is about guarding alertness. And those first three chapters talk about, first, the danger. If we don't guard alertness, it can cause us a lot of suffering. Then the benefits if we do guard alertness, it can eliminate the fear of all suffering and bring every virtue into our hands, bringing causes for every happiness up to enlightenment into our hands, easily. It's very easy, actually. Then verse 4. So verse 4 through 8 are basically all talking about, so some of these are quite famous verses. Sometimes when you look at, like, if you do a Google search for what did the Buddha say, one of the common kind of quotes that appears is that the Buddha said everything comes from the mind. It's kind of a catchy sort of idea these days. Everything comes from the mind. So these verses are all about that. But it requires a little explanation to understand what that really means. So let's look at these verses. Verse 4. Tigers, lions, elephants, bears, snakes, and all forms of enemies, the guardians of the hell worlds, evil spirits, and cannibals, will all be bound by binding my mind alone, and will all be subdued by subduing my mind alone. And then verse 6, the perfect teacher himself, so that's an epithet for the Buddha, the perfect teacher himself has shown that in this way all fears, as well as all boundless miseries, originate from the mind. So this comes close to what is often quoted. That in this way all fears, as well as all boundless miseries, originate from the mind. Who intentionally created all the weapons for those in hell? Who created the burning iron ground? From where did all the women in hell ensue? So here, women in hell ensue. It's not saying that women are bad or something like that. He's teaching to a male audience. So there's a particular kind of hell. This refers to this especially. There's many different kinds of hells. Right? I won't explain them all to you today because you might go home unhappy. But basically there's like a hot hell and a cold hell, and then there's the surrounding hell. So in the surrounding hells, one of them is like, so this is like for people who take, I guess probably out of like strong attachment for a lover, so someone, boyfriend or girlfriend, have incredible attachment, and out of that maybe do a lot of destructive things. Like oftentimes people even commit murder, because they're in love with someone, and then their partner cheats on them, or goes off with someone else or something. You get very angry. Usually it's guys do this. Women don't do this. It's mostly men do this, right? So that's probably why it's something about. It's for a male audience here. So like there's this kind of hell where like you I forget the name of it, but there's a tree. There's this place, there's trees, and you see the object of your attachment. Say if you're in love with this woman and you killed her and her spouse because of your jealousy, then you take rebirth in hell, then it's likely you experience this. So you see this tree, and on the top of the tree is this beautiful woman kind of calling to you, saying, come on, honey, we'll have a good time. and then you start climbing up the tree, but as you climb up, all the branches point down, and they're like swords, and they cut you as you climb up. But you're so entranced with attachment that you keep climbing up, and you're getting all cut. And then when you get to the top, the woman turns into like a vulture and pecks your eyes out, right? And then you become restored, and you see the same person down below, and so you climb back down trying to get to them again. So you just go up and down like this, being cut. So it's this kind of. So, but if it was a woman who was born, then they would see their male lover, and it would be the man, right? So anyway, he's asking the basic idea here is like think about like hell. Like, well, I'll come back to the explanation. Let's just read through the verses now, and then I'll come back to the explanation. But he's saying, where did these things come from? Like, what created this environment in hell? What created the fire in hell? What created the sense of cold? What created the other people that you see? All these appearances, where did they come from? Who intentionally, so verse 7 again, who intentionally created all the weapons for those in hell? Who created the burning iron ground? From where did all the women or men in hell ensue? The Mighty One has said that all such things are the workings of a negative mind. Hence, within the three world spheres means the desire realm, the form, and formless realm. So this is a way of describing all of samsara. You can just think, hence within all of samsara, there is nothing to fear other than my own mind. So that's quite a profound statement. Hence within all, basically you can say, hence within all the world, there is nothing to fear other than my own mind. Why? Because every instance of suffering we experience has all arisen from our own negative karma. That negative karma was all created by us engaging actions with a harmful motivation, with a destructive, out of a destructive emotion, ignorance or anger or attachment, right? So out of a destructive emotion, we create karma. The result of the karma is we experience suffering. So basically, every suffering experience we have, it mainly arises from our own mind. That's what it's saying. So hence, within all the world's spheres, there is nothing to fear other than my mind. Okay. So let's start with verse 4 again. I'll just explain briefly each verse. So verse 4 is basically like the scary zoo. It's like being in a jungle. It's not a zoo, a jungle. Tigers, lions, elephants, bears, snakes. So he's basically, think about a person living in ancient India. These are like really daily, things that are potential deadly encounters on a daily basis, right? For us, it's kind of like zoo animals, right? But for a person living 2,600 or 2,000 years ago, tigers, lions, elephants, bears, and snakes are something you could well meet like any day, and all other forms of enemies. So that's why he's talking about them as enemies, because of the things that could potentially really harm us. Right? So all these kinds of potentially harmful things, just as a human being, not to mention the guardians of the hell worlds, right? So if we were to take rebirth in hell, like where the guardians, so there's like different kinds of creatures. I guess hell in one way it's like going to I don't want to say any country, but maybe a very, very bad prison in a very bad country where there's like torture people. So hell's like it's a big torture chamber kind of way. So there's these beings that appear who appear to like harm you. So where do they come from? And then even in this life or in future lives, evil spirits that possess us, demons that possess you or harm you, or cannibals. Cannibals, not much now. I don't know, 2,000 years ago in India, were there a lot of cannibals? Was there cannibalism in India? I never heard of it.
There still is.
There is?
In Arunachal, there's.
Really? Right. In Northeast.
No, the islands on the east of.
Islands
in the Bay of Bengal.
Oh, really?
Towards the east of India.
Oh, where that guy was, that American missionary was shot recently?
Yeah, same place.
There's cannibalism?
Now there's.
Like during
During
the years of exploration, like 1400s, 1500s, you'd hear about ships going to some islands in the South Pacific or something. Anyway, you get the idea. In Africa, actually, in the heart of darkness, by what is it by? I don't know. Anyway, it's a novel about a Dutch man engaging in the slave trade in Africa, like the Congo, in like the 1400s. He talks about cannibalism, but it's just a story. So anyway. But probably, anyway, it probably existed in the past, right? But it's something very scary. Imagine other human beings like kind of. So these are all these kind of harms. So it's saying all these kinds of harms in verse 4 will all be bound by binding my mind alone. And will all be subdued by subduing my mind alone. So there's a footnote there. Let's look at that. Endnote 11. It says, okay, so there's from the sutra at the back. The Ratnamega Sutra. So this is on page 171, note 11. If control is gained over my mind alone, control will be gained over everything. Right? If control is gained over my mind alone, control will be gained over everything. And both wholesome and unwholesome actions are accumulated by the mind. So there's the key, actually. That's like a key for how to understand the first statement. So when he says, you know, if all these tigers, elephants, bears, snakes, all forms of animals and cannibals, all will be bound by the binding my mind alone. And then in the sutra it says, if control is gained over my mind alone, control will be gained over everything. So that's difficult to understand. I mean, if you gain control over my mind, how is that going to change the weather? Like, how is that going to change the way my boss deals with me? How is that going to change the economy? Right? You can have all kinds of skeptical thought, you know, ideas like that. How is that going to, like, you know, change the president or something? But it's like this. Then the second he says, both wholesome and unwholesome actions are accumulated by the mind. Basically, it's through karma. Through karma, the law of cause and effect. Right? If we control our mind, then we can control whether we create virtuous karma, which then becomes cause for happiness, or non-virtuous karma, which becomes the cause for our suffering. Right? So that's the way. And if we gradually eliminate every non-virtuous karma, so we don't create any non-virtuous karma, we purify all the we purify or experience the result of all the non-virtuous karma that we created in the past. Then even if we do get like eaten by a lion or killed by an enemy, we experience it as just joyful. We don't experience suffering. Right? Karma basically determines what kind of experience we have. So even the Buddha, I mean Shakyamuni Buddha, of course, he doesn't have any negative karma. But in his life, like he was totally betrayed by his cousin, Devdata, totally betrayed by Devdata, who split the Sangha at one point, had convinced King Ajatashatru to try to kill him. He was even cut. I mean, even one of the murder attempts on Shakyamuni Buddha, he was his foot, one of his feet was badly cut by a shard of rock, right? And he bled. That's why there's of the 5 heinous crimes, one of them is intentionally drawing the blood of the Buddha. Right? That's how that one, well, I don't know, just come around to that. But anyway, so how can you explain that if the Buddha doesn't have any negative karma, then how can he be cut by a shard of rock? You know, in one way it doesn't make sense. But actually, I mean, one, that's just an appearance. One way to explain it is it's the appearance of his students, right? It's the karma of the people around the Buddha to have that, to see that happen. But from the Buddha's own side, his experience is not of pain. There's no pain. It's just total. I mean, another good evidence for that is when the Buddha died. The Buddha's last meal, he received a meal from a blacksmith. Is it right? You probably know. It's from a blacksmith, I believe. One blacksmith wanted to offer the Buddha a meal. It was either of some kind of mushrooms or pig's feet. I think probably mushrooms. But it's a mushroom. If it's a mushroom called like pig's feet. Anyway, the Buddha said, yes, I'll accept it. And then he ate some, and then he promptly told Ananda, bury this. Don't let anyone else eat it. Because if anyone else eats it, they will die from it. Right? So the Buddha, he could bear taking that meal. And of course, he took that meal knowing that it's going to make him very sick. But in order to allow the benefactor to create merit, in order to give the benefactor an opportunity to create merit. But I mean, to outward appearances, it looks like the Buddha is very sick and experiencing like dysentery, very weak, and he showed that aspect. But internally, his experience is just one of total bliss. It's just peace and joy. There's no actual suffering. Because, I mean, if there was suffering, then it would mean that the Buddha is experiencing the result of negative karma. But of course, Buddha is someone who's purified all negative karma. So the way to explain that appearance is that the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha was appearing as a supreme emanation body. It was an emanation body, which means the Buddhas have to appear in accord with the karma of the disciples, of the ordinary people to whom they appear. Just like now, for example, if you've had a relative and they pass away, they die, then you still feel that they're present in the space around you. Sometimes you see them in dreams, or sometimes, like ghosts. there's a house that's haunted or something. You feel the presence of beings, but you can't see them. Why? Because the karma is very different. It's because the karma is totally different. So of course the Buddhas, they don't take rebirth through the force of karma. So if there are, just like we don't have the karma to see those kind of spirits and ghosts around, because we are experiencing the appearance that's created by human karma. Right? We've taken the human rebirth, and so we have the karma to see things as a human being does. Even we don't have the karma to experiencing things the way like a dog does, or a bee. Like dogs can smell very, very, very subtle scents that we can't perceive. Why? Because they have the karma to be able to experience those things. We don't have that karma. They can hear sounds that we can't experience. Even some animals, they seem to have a kind of clairvoyance that they can know when their owner is coming home, even long before the owner is in the vicinity. They just somehow know that. Or earthquakes. There's a common phenomenon of animals being able to know that there's an earthquake coming a day or more before it comes. Or, even 3 hours, 12 hours, 24 hours before. It's a commonly known phenomenon that animals, if they're near the seashore, they start going inland. Nobody knows why, or they start being very restless. So why? Because they have the karma to perceive things which we can't perceive. We have the karma to perceive things which they can't perceive. It's different karma. So the point here, though, is I'm digressing in a big way. But the point here is that when the Buddhas appear to us in the human form, they have to appear in a way that fits our karma. So they have to appear in a way that looks human. Right? So they appear as having sickness and having to go to sleep and having to wake up and having to wash their body and getting sores and getting cut and things like that. But the internal experience is totally different from what we experience. So, and that was digressing from the idea that all kinds of every kind of danger that it's possible, that danger that there is, danger from being eaten by tigers or devoured by cannibals, or taking rebirth in hell, or suffering from depression, or having low self-esteem, or having high blood pressure. All those things, they come from our karma. Where does our karma come from? It comes from our mind. So by subduing our mind, we can be free from all those dangers. It doesn't mean just by becoming a very happy, positive, kind person in this life, I'll never become sick, I'll never get upset, nobody will ever treat me in ways I don't want. Because we're experiencing now karma that we created in the past, right? So, but the deal is, if we start creating really good karma now, our future will be much better. Our present will also be better, but our future will be even better, much better. Okay, let's look at verse 6. The perfect teacher himself has shown that in this way all fears as well as all boundless miseries originate from the mind. So how? From karma, basically. So, all fears as well as all boundless miseries originate from the mind. Who intentionally created all the weapons for those in hell? Who created the burning iron ground? From where did all the women in hell ensue, or the men in hell ensue? The Mighty One has said, so the Mighty One again is an epithet for Shakyamuni Buddha here. The Mighty One has said that all such things are the workings of a negative mind. Hence, within the 3 world spheres, within all of samsara, there is nothing to fear other than my mind. Right? So all harm that I receive all comes from my mind. Another helpful way to think about this is especially when you think about hell. Hell is like a severe psychotic disorder, right? When you have a severe psychosis, like schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, is usually more mild, but schizophrenia is the best. But you have, or even sometimes if you take alcohol, you drink a lot of alcohol and get drunk, or you have withdrawal from alcohol, or you take other drugs like psychosilibants, like LSD and psychedelic mushrooms and those kind of things. You have hallucinations. So where do the appearances come from? You can hear things and see things that don't really exist. Also, when you like I was saying, when you're drunk or when you have like severe psychiatric disorders, then you can you see things. You can see other beings, other people. You can hear things. You can see whole environments. You can believe in whole like scenarios. That like the KGB is trying to get you. Right? All these people, they're like chasing you. And you can hear God like talking to you. The voices, not like real God, but you think you hear the voices of like God or the devil or all these things talking to you. And to you, from that person's point of view, it's real. You cannot distinguish between what is normally considered real and what is being. That's the tragedy of those kind of psychosis, is that you don't know what's real and what's not, right? And it becomes very scary and very destructive, right? So, but where do all those appearances come from? They come from the mind, from the forces of the personal mind. Just like dreams. Everything we experience in dreams, where does it come from? It comes from energy in our own minds. The mind projects it. But with dreams, it's quite easy because they only last a short time and then we wake up and then it's over, right? But with a severe mental disorder like schizophrenia, it's like you can even take medication. You can even be diagnosed. You even realize you have schizophrenia and the delusions don't disappear. They're still there. They still appear. Right? So if that can happen on the basis of having a human body, we have a human body and we can still have those kind of severe delusion, those severe deluded appearances that are projected by the mind, then imagine what can happen when your mind is separated from your body. You're no longer taking rebirth through the force of human, you're no longer existing on a basis that is projected by human karma, but it's like the same kind of forces in your mind. Your mind becomes separated from the human body, and those forces project, a nightmare that just doesn't end for thousands of years. That's what hell is like that. Right? So that's how hell comes from the mind. You can see how hell, and also heaven, it's the same. Heaven is no different. A heaven is so. I don't want to focus too much on the sort of the miserable half, because the very same kind of forces that can project a whole hellish experience which lasts for years. It's like you never wake. It's like a nightmare that you don't wake up from for a long time until the karma to experience that nightmare has exhausted. Right? But the same system, you can project your experience of heaven. A heavenly experience. And also there's a whole environment and all beings that inhabit it, and it's just totally blissful, happiness, happy, joy, just for years and years and years. Until the karma to experience that also becomes exhausted. Right? That's also why heaven is also, it's not a stable happiness, it's not a stable source of happiness. Anything that arises, any happiness that arises to the force of karma, is not stable, right? Because it only lasts as long as the karma to experience lasts, and then it ends. Right? So that's why, that's why it's wise to seek a state of happiness, the happiness of liberation or enlightenment, that is not just a projection of karma. It's a production of, because karma is always, the kind of karma we're talking about here is called contaminated karma, but it's always produced out of ignorance, right? Out of not understanding how we as a person exist. Right? You can even eliminate the ignorance that doesn't know about how karma works. But if you still have the ignorance that grasps at the self as existing in a way that it doesn't, then however much positive karma you create, it's still not stable. Right? It only produces happiness that lasts is temporary, basically. Happiness that lasts for a limited amount of time, and then it's over. Whereas the happiness of liberation from samsara, instead of being produced from ignorance, grasping at a self in a way that doesn't exist, it's produced from wisdom, seeing the truth of selflessness, seeing the truth that this kind of self we grasp at doesn't exist, right? And not that there is no self, there is a kind of person that exists, but knowing how the person actually exists and not grasping at it as existing in any more concrete way than it really does. Right? So then out of wisdom, then we engage in, especially the wisdom which directly perceives interdependence, and directly perceive self-insist. Then we engage in positive actions, and then we create a basis for stable happiness, lasting happiness. That's a little more complicated than we want to get, but the idea is that we can, we can eliminate the cause of every form of suffering, but it depends on what we do with our mind. Do you have any questions? I don't give you time now, but I'm not out of time for questions. Do you have any questions so far about just to review, we've done, we did a couple minutes of meditation at first, then we did some motivation, then we talked about the first 4 chapters, briefly, the benefits of the awakening mind, then confessing all of our faults, I forget what it's called, we use some other term. Disclosure of wrongdoing, means confessing all negative things we've done in the past. Then the ritual for fully accepting awakening mind, and making a commitment to devote one's life to the practice of that. And then being conscientious, which is basically being conscientious or mindful of how we have such an incredible fortunate circumstance we have now, and that it's not going to last forever, because we're going to die away from the circumstance, and it's not sure what's going to happen to us after we die, right? And then this chapter, regarding alertness, which is basically saying that in order to make the most of this fortunate circumstance we have now, the main thing is to focus on our mind, and what's going on with our mind, and learn how to generate mindfulness and eliminate mindfulness of just being able to focus on the chosen object, and also mindfulness of positive and negative states of mind in which we create non-virtuous and virtuous karma. Okay, if you don't have any questions, I'll just go on. Anyway, you can just pump your hand up if you have any questions. So, verse 9. If the perfection of generosity were the So these next, verse 9, 10, 11, basically verse 9, 10, 11, they're all talking about what it means to perfect the mind, right? And how there's a difference between perfecting our mind and perfecting everything. Perfecting our mind doesn't mean perfecting everything. It just means perfecting our own attitude. Okay. If the perfection of generosity were the elimination of the world's poverty, then since beings are still starving now, means there are many people who are still starving now, in what manner did the previous Buddha perfect it? Means perfect generosity. I'll come back. The perfection of generosity is said to be the thought to give all beings everything, together with the fruit of such a thought. Hence, it is simply a state of mind. Nowhere has the killing of fish and other creatures been eradicated, for the attainment of merely the thought to forsake such things is explained as the perfection of moral discipline. So, from verse 9 again, if the perfection of generosity were the alleviation of the world's poverty, then since many beings are still starving now, in what manner did the previous Buddhas perfect generosity? So it's saying the perfection of generosity, when we say perfect, to achieve enlightenment, we have to perfect all positive attitudes. So what does that mean? Was one positive attitude is the attitude of generosity. So what does it mean to perfect generosity? So he's saying here, basically, he's trying to make the point in a different way, in a slightly different way. So this is the beauty of this text really is that there's so many different lines of reasoning, that come to bear on one point. So you think, the main point of this chapter is pay attention to what's going on with your mind. You have to see that your mind is the most important thing, to focus on in your life. Right? In this life, it's the most important thing we can do is to train our mind. Right? Instead of training our body, instead of making a lot of friends, instead of becoming famous, instead of becoming wealthy, train your mind. So he's using a lot of different reasoning. So the beauty of this text is he used many different lines of reasoning to prove that point. Right? So this line of reasoning is saying, even to talk about perfecting a positive quality like generosity, really that comes down to the attitude, the mind. What state of mind have you developed? It's not, perfecting generosity is not about giving away everything we have, eliminating all poverty, eliminating all disease, helping everybody with everything they need help with. It's impossible to do that. We're just one ordinary person. How can we, eliminate all hunger in the world? Of course, it's good to strive to contribute to eliminating hunger and eliminating sickness and helping people. But the perfection of generosity for us is not eliminating all those external things. It's perfection of the attitude. So again, it comes back to the mind, so to say. If the perfection of generosity were the alleviation of all the world's poverty, then since there are many beings starving now, in what manner did the previous Buddhas perfect generosity? Right? The perfection of generosity, rather, is said to be the thought to give all beings everything. So it's an attitude, wishing that all beings could have everything they need. Wishing that I could feed all of the hungry, give medicine to all the sick, give education to all those who don't have education, give friendship to all those who are lonely. So it's the perfection of that thought. The thought to give all beings everything, together with the fruit of such a thought. So here the fruit of such a thought means even the merit. It means the merit that arises. So even if you have, if you have the thought, if I could only feed all the hungry and clothe all the naked and give medicine to all the sick, you could create an incredible amount of merit. But there's a danger we become attached to the merit. That we become like merit mongers. We only think about like, I'm creating so much merit. I'm such a good practitioner. I'm such a good Buddhist. Me, I. So as an antidote to that is thinking, even whatever merit I create, may others enjoy that. Even I give away that. Even my body, may I give away my body. So even giving away the fruit of such a thought, so we don't become selfish. Together with the fruit of such a thought, hence it is simply a state of mind. So he's saying again, it comes back to the mind. Then 11. Nowhere has the killing of fish and other creatures been eradicated. For the attainment of merely the thought to forsake such things is explained as the perfection of moral discipline. So it's perfecting moral discipline doesn't mean we have to stop everybody from lying and stealing and killing. Of course, where we can, we should try to help. We should try to stop others from doing those things. But and to perfect our moral discipline, we do have to stop killing and lying and stealing and sexual misconduct and slander and so things. We do have to stop actions of our body and our speech that are destructive to others. But as long as we don't another way of looking at this, I'm not sure this is what he's saying here, but another way of looking at this, you think of in Buddhism, we talk about moral discipline. Basically, there's like in Christianity, there's the 10 Commandments. In Islam, I don't know, but in Buddhism, the moral discipline is basically abandoning the 10 non-virtuous actions. Right? Abandoning the 10 non-virtuous actions. So the first of the 10 non-virtuous actions, the 3 are body, killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. So those are listed first because they're easiest to refrain from. Things we physically do, killing, stealing, sexual misconduct. So they're easier to refrain from and very harmful. They're the most harmful. And then the next 4 are non-virtues of speech: lying, slander, harsh speech, or belittling, insulting speech, and then idle gossip. So those are slightly more difficult to refrain from, and slightly less harmful. But those are actions of speech. But even if we abandon all non-virtues of body, all the non-virtues of speech, if we haven't abandoned non-virtues of mind, we don't kill other people, but we still have the thought, I wish they would die. That's a non-virtuous action, right? We don't lie to other people, but we still have the thought, I hope they don't find out what I'm doing, right? Or I hope we don't slander. Maybe we don't slander other people with our speech, but we still have negative thoughts towards that person. I hope they don't have any friends. I hope all their friends abandon them, something like that. We haven't perfected moral discipline as long as we still have we even harm others in our own mind, with our thoughts. But here he's making a kind of a slightly different point that perfecting moral discipline doesn't mean that all killing is limited everywhere. Rather, it means we forsake the thought of such things. So nowhere has the killing of fish and other creatures been eradicated. For the attainment of merely the thought to forsake such things is explained as the perfection of moral discipline. But then you might have the question, I mean, and it's a legitimate question. But, okay, what if can you forsake the thought of killing, but you still kill things? Like, you forsake the thought of killing mosquitoes, like, I don't want to kill you, but, I have to get rid of you. No, that's not, no. Actually, so even the thought to kill a mosquito, you can't do that without the thought. Your hand just doesn't lift up itself and come smack down on a mosquito, right? It's a voluntary action, right? So even you might not consciously be thinking like, I hate mosquito, I want to kill you, like, but still, there has to be some thought process that leads your hand to smack down on the mosquito, right? So it's not that you can, just on one level eliminate the thought of killing and still just happily engage in killing things or lying or any other action. You have to eliminate the action as well. But even you abandon voluntarily killing, but I mean, we involuntarily kill things all the time. Just by breathing, we breathe in insects. By taking medicine for stomach pain, you're killing bacteria in your system, right? Involuntarily we kill things all the time, but those actions, like when we're walking down the street, we step on ants. But those really are involuntary. Like if you see an ant, you try to avoid it. But you can't be looking at the ground all the time. Sometimes you have to look to see what cars are coming. So sometimes you're going to kill things, and that's not like, that doesn't mean you haven't, that you're not being moral, right? That you don't have a pure moral discipline if you accidentally do this. So that's the tension. Yes.
And Guru Rinpoche killing the bad karma, the guys, when he killed in his stride and somebody that had bad karma to leave his kingdom.
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure about this story. What is the story?
So he wanted to leave his kingdom.
Yeah.
So he led his stride and following somebody that had bad karma. He knew that.
Who wanted to leave his kingdom? Okay. He had a kingdom and he wanted to leave it.
Yes. His first kingdom.
Yeah.
And he wanted to leave it.
Yeah.
So he knew or first saw that this guy had bad karma. So he was dancing next to him with his stride and he let it fall and killed him. So that counts as.
That's probably different. I mean, even the Buddha in his past life, the Bodhisattva, he killed a merchant in the ship. There's a famous story about the Buddha in his past life. He killed. In one past life, there was a ship with 500 merchants. One of them was going to kill all the others and steal all their treasure. So the Buddha in his past life, he killed that person instead, knowing that he was going to kill the others.
Okay.
Yeah. So sometimes, but that's not, I mean, those are actions of people on a very different level than us, very, like even Long Dharma. I don't know if you know the story of Long Dharma. Long Dharma was a anti-Buddhist king in Tibet. So after Buddhism, through the kindness of Guru Rinpoche and Shantarashika, the abbot of ancient Nalanda Monastery, Nalanda University, Buddhism first spread in Tibet under King Trisam Detsen? Somsen Gompo, yeah, thank you. So Trisam Detsen was much later. Under King Somsen Gompo, Buddhism first flourished in Tibet, and Samyang was built, and Guru Rinpoche went there and stuff. And then a later king, Long Dharma, came along, and he was anti-Buddhist, so he destroyed monasteries, killed a lot of monks, almost totally eliminated Buddhism. And then one Buddhist monk killed him.
Really?
Yeah.
After one of the other monks Choe,
killed the king. It was a monk, I think. No?
He disrobed and then he killed it.
He disrobed. So one monk first disrobed, and then he killed that anti-Buddhist king. Yeah. So. Yeah, and I'm not saying it benefited the Dharma in the long run. So, sometimes usually the way the story about the Buddha in the past life killing the one merchant, sometimes it's explained they create the karma of killing. It's a non-virtuous action, but they see that by creating that one non-virtuous action, they're actually benefiting, they're going to benefit that person because it stops them from doing something much more harmful than they would do. You know, like
lying to someone to make them not know certain things and stuff.
can be. It could be like that. But I mean, but yeah, this is a very, it's a very kind of, let me say, it's like it's like complicated. It's very kind of complicated and sort of dangerous topic, you know, because you can easily slip into excusing lying, for example, or making excuses for killing when you don't really know it's beneficial. So it's only kind of permissible if, you know, through clairvoyance, you really know definitely that if I do this, I accept the negative karma I'm going to create, but I know definitely that it's going to be beneficial for this person who's being harmed out and other people in the long
You
run.
have to know.
Yeah, you would have to know, otherwise you shouldn't do that.
Yeah, I attended a teaching recently by Tenzin on chapter 6 of this book, and I think the same topic came up, and she said something along the lines of, well, the important thing to know is it's coming from a place of compassion, because that is out of extreme compassion. And it's like, she was saying that try killing even a mosquito with compassion.
Yeah,
You're not going to be able to do it. You're not going to be like, oh, I really care about you. And it's just not something that's genuine. And so like, it's sort of like, maybe it's, it's not in our experience. We don't have that kind of ability to compassionately take life.
Yeah, because our positive attitudes are not that strong. That strong. But the Guru Rinpoche example would be the same. I mean, he's had generated a very high level of realization, and so you can see that. I think once. No, but that was before he was enlightened. That was just negative karma. That was just out of spite. In the early part of his life. Yeah, because his mother wanted him to. That's different. In the early part of his life, out of malevolence basically, and wanted to please his mother, and out of vengeance, he killed those people. That's different. But why are we talking about this? Because we were talking about the perfection of morality. That perfecting the abandoning killing doesn't mean that we stop everybody from killing anybody anyway. That we cause everyone to stop killing. It means we abandon even the attitude wishing to kill. So then the question about Guru Rinpoche fits. Was what about people who seem to have become enlightened but show the aspect of killing others? I mean, there's also Tilopa. Sort of Tilopa and Naropa. When Naropa first met Tilopa was like plucking fish out of the lake and frying them alive like on a fire and then eating them. So also like, what is that? He's supposed to be an enlightened being. Like, how can he be killing fish? But I mean, there are the explanation given as usually that, I mean, he's doing poa, the transference of consciousness of the fish. So when he's plucking the fish out, he's sending their consciousness to a pure land, and then so they're actually he's separating the consciousness from the body, so it's killing, but he's sending the consciousness to a pure land where they can make great strides in their spiritual development. Right? So it gets complicated. Anyway, let's look at verse 12. If you have any more questions, we can come back. Okay, verse 12. So verse 12, 13, 14. This is some of the most famous verses quoted from the Bodhisattva's way of life. Very, very commonly quoted. So these are all kind of about how the controlling external things comes from controlling the internal, comes from controlling the mind. So in verse 12, unruly beings are as unlimited as space. They cannot possibly all be overcome. However, if I overcome thoughts of anger alone, this will be equivalent to vanquishing all foes. 13. Where would I possibly find enough leather with which to cover the surface of the earth? Yet wearing leather just on the soles of my shoes is equivalent to covering the earth with it. Likewise, it is not possible for me to restrain the external course of things. But should I restrain this mind of mine, what would be the need to restrain all else? So from 12, unruly beings are as unlimited as space. Means unruly beings means, you know, people who irritate us, people who do things that are, you know, disturbing, that are like, you know, immoral, disrespectful, bad, whatever you want. So unruly beings, people who make problems for us, make problems in the world. Unruly beings are as unlimited as space. They're infinite in number. There's countless unruly beings. They cannot possibly all be overcome. So we can't control, like everybody else, what everybody does. However, if I overcome thoughts of anger alone, this will be equivalent to vanquishing all foes. So think about, like, you know, I think a good example of this in our life is like when people tease us, right? With other people teasing us. Like when we would, you know, I don't know, probably we've all been teased when we're kids or we're teenagers. Some of us even now, sometimes even when people become parents and their kids tease them. Like, I had one friend, a nun, she's an interesting person. Venerable Patricia from the United States. She was I think a Baptist minister from Tennessee. She's from Tennessee. She was very Christian, from very Christian background. Strong Christian faith, became a minister for years and years. Was a minister in the Methodist Church, the Baptist Church, one of the Protestant churches. And then later in her life met Buddhism and was completely like converted to Buddhism. Was very strong Buddhism, became a nun, became ordained. And then I met her at that time. She was, and now I think she lives in England now in a Buddhist center or something. I haven't been in touch with her for a long time. But she was telling me that, because she raised her children as Christians. Right? She was a minister, so she raised her children very strong Christians. And later in her life, when she became Buddhist, her children really didn't like it. They really thought she's gone crazy. She's totally like lost it, and she's like, not only she's lost it, but she's doing something that's really bad. That's like sin. It's heavy sin. You know, heathen. It's a heathen religion. Wrong views. Just as Buddhism, we talk about wrong views, one of the heaviest things. Christians, same thing. So she was telling me how her children, because we're talking about being teased, right? How her children, they would tease her a lot when they were growing up. You know, they knew like just the things they could say that really irritate her and make her get angry and set her off. So I mean, we all know, like, you know, people tease us about certain things. It's like we all have triggers, right? We all have certain things that trigger us. And with our parents or our siblings, we know the things that kind of get under their skin as well, right? So she was telling me that she had to kind of have this realization that if I just don't react when they tease me, if I just don't react, then it's like they have no impetus to tease me. That they tease her in order to get a reaction. You know, in order to provoke a reaction, that's the pleasure. You know, that's how they win the game. You know, it's like a game. You know, if the children tease the mother and then the mother just kind of goes off like the children are expecting, then it's just like, you know, it's like a puppeteer. You know, you pull certain strings and the puppet does certain things, and it's very funny. But if you pull the strings and the puppet doesn't move, then like the game quickly becomes very boring. Like there's nothing to watch. So she was saying, I realized like if I just don't react, like later in the text it says, remain like a piece of wood. I just don't react to whatever they say. I just think whatever they can say whatever they want, and it doesn't matter. Then there's no harm. Then I don't get upset, and they don't keep teasing me, and then it's like then I have peace of mind instead of always reacting to these things that people say. So that's kind of what it's like it's saying here. You know, like when you're being teased, if you don't react to the teasing, you just think, yeah, whatever they say, it's fine. Like, other people's, you know, because we often have the misconception that like other people's actions control our reactions, like that. Like other people's actions, the other things other people do, that determines how I react, right? But that's totally false. That's a totally wrong way of thinking. It's totally not true. Like how we react is up to us. Of course, we don't have 100% control of how we react, because we react largely due to the force of our past habituation. How we, you know, each time we react, there's aspects of what causes us to react. When people provoke us in certain ways, why do we react in certain ways? Like, why do we react in certain ways? Part of it is due to habituation, and part of it is due to voluntarily deciding to follow that, right? There's certain thoughts that arise, sometimes somebody does something to you and different thoughts arise, like in very quick sequence. Like one thought can be kind of like just let them have it, and another thought can be just to like, just by your tongue, right? And in a split moment, we have to decide like which thought to follow, right? So part of like what thoughts arise in the first place, and then the thinking process, like what thought do we follow, how do we decide to react? Partly it's due to like probably 85%, 90%, it varies. Maybe 99% is due to habituation, but there's always a little space of conscientious decision, right, where we can decide. Right? So through practicing mindfulness, we want to increase the conscientious decision space and reduce where the habituation is negative, we want to reduce it. And we want to create positive habituation. Right? So we want to become conscious of the whole process. But yeah. So I was saying that because we have the misconception that other people's actions determines how I react. So what I'm trying to make the point here is that that's not the case. We determine how we react, but it's not always the case that right in that moment, each time we determine how we react, but it's part of a kind of learned drama. We all have, especially in this life, like the way we react to our parents when we're growing up, we get in certain habits of reacting to certain behaviors in certain ways as a way of relating to our parents. And then also part of it carries over from past lives, right? But all of that, none of that is fixed and permanent. We can recreate all of that, but the first step is just becoming conscious of the whole process and coming to the understanding and coming to the certainty that I can determine how I react. I can control how I react in any situation if I put effort. It's not like all of a sudden it happens overnight, but with practice, we can control how we react in any situation. But it requires gradual practice over time, over a long time. But if we never start, then we'll never get that. So I like, but in terms of this common misconception we have that other people's actions determine how we react, I like to look at, there's these little phrases you see in English, don't make me, do something. Like even a parent with a child, like, don't make me, send you to bed. Don't make me do that. As if like something the child does makes the parent do something. The parents deciding what to do is a decision they make. It's not a necessary consequence of what the child does. I can't think of another phrase right now. Sometimes you hear these little things. Yeah. Anyway, I can't think, I should write some down and memorize them better. But sometimes you hear these phrases where it indicates that people are saying like, what you do is going to make me do something. Like, don't make me angry. That is a compliment. Don't make me angry. As if like something someone else does is necessarily going to cause me to get angry, and it's your fault. Like, blaming my getting angry is your fault because you did that. But it's like,
me started.
What?
Don't get me started.
Yeah, don't get me started. Yeah, exactly. Like, it's like we're blaming, it's like we have to take responsibility for our emotions. Our emotions are due to our karma and due to decisions we make about how to react, and due to our habits that we build up over time about how we react to things. Right? So as long as we really believe that if other people do things, that means, if other people do things to me, that means I'm going to get angry. Then it's like, we're just giving in to our own worst habits, really. So that's kind of what it's saying here. Unruly beings are not unlimited as space. They cannot possibly all be overcome. Right? So if we have this expectation that I'll only stop getting angry when everybody else stops doing anything that I don't like, then do you think you're ever going to stop being angry that way? No. If you feel like a necessary, okay, I see the anger.
VR is coming.
What?
VR is coming.
What?
VR is coming. You can do whatever you want with the world and
well, as
live
long
in
as
that
you're
one.
plugged in, you're plugged in, yeah. But like, yeah.
Yeah, people are never gonna do whatever you want.
if you see like anger as a real problem in your life, you have high blood pressure maybe. Your parents died of heart attacks, in a fit of rage. And you see that like, if I don't stop getting angry, it's causing me congenital heart, I'm going to suffer from congenital heart failure and like die in a big heart attack like my parents. Or you find yourself like lonely in your old age. You have no friends because you burned the bridges with your siblings. When your parents died, you fought over the inheritance and you don't talk to them anymore. And all the people you used to work with, like, they don't call you because you just have such a short temper. They don't know what to say when they're around you. And in your old age, you're lonely because you see, I'm just making an example, right? You see that anger is a problem, but you feel like that's just the way I am. When other people do things, I just can't help myself. Like, they get me started. And so for me to become not angry requires everybody else to just act in exactly the way I expect them to. Then do you think that's realistic? That's totally unrealistic. Like, here, unruly beings are as unlimited as space. Right? They cannot possibly all become overcome. Like, you cannot change the way everybody else reacts. However, if I overcome thoughts of anger alone, how do we reduce our own anger? We have to change the way we think. If I overcome thoughts of anger alone, this will be equivalent to vanquishing all foes. That is the equivalent to making everyone treat me the way I want, is to just think, you can treat me however you want. Then, if you take away the expectation, then there's no target to be hit. There's no expectation to be upset. It's like, there's nothing, if you just expect that, you can even make a prayer, may other people maltreat me. May other people mistreat me. Then when they mistreat you, you go, oh, thank you. My prayers have been answered. It's just a difference in perspective. Like, we can generate that perspective, May people insult me. May people, belittle me. May people like call me, baldy or big nose or whatever, fatty. Then when they do, oh, thank you. So but we can, or I mean, even just not quite that extreme, but we can just think, just like even in let's see, the Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. There's one Roman philosopher, Marcus Aurelius. There's a famous book, the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius. Beautiful book. A lot of great advice, and some of it's so similar to Shantideva, incredibly similar. So even in there, he says, when he wakes up in the morning, he thinks like, there are tons of people who are going to try to cheat me and lie to me today. But why do they do that? Because they're small-minded and they're controlled by their own greed and ignorance. That's why they do that. So if I just expect that from the beginning, then when they do that to me, it's no surprise and it's nothing to get upset about. It's just, that's the way they are, the poor things. Right? That's another way. With compassion, to think about people when they do things to mistreat me, to create problems for me, to insult me, belittle me. Why do they do that? They're controlled by their own ignorance, by their own afflictive emotions. They don't realize how destructive that is. Not only for me, but for them, for themselves. So generate compassion for them in that way, then there's no room to get irritated. Why get irritated? The poor things. They don't realize that, of course, people are going to act like that. My technician is fine. Of course people are going to act like that, and when they do, like, instead of being upset, irritated at them, think, how miserable it must be to be living in a mind that is like, thinks or takes pleasure in disturbing other people, in this way, harming other people. So then 13, where would I possibly find enough leather with which to cover the surface of the earth? So expecting to be able to change the way everybody behaves is like thinking, covering in order to, so that I never step on thorns and rocks and things. I have to cover the whole earth with leather. I'll make the whole earth a smooth place to walk so that I don't have to I can walk anywhere I want, right? That's ridiculous. Rather, you just put shoes on. Where would I possibly find enough leather with which to cover the surface of the earth? Yet wearing leather on just the soles of my feet, right? Just put shoes on. It's equivalent to covering the earth with it, right? So just wearing shoes is like covering, it's like making the whole world a Nike, you know? Like, it's like, then you put shoes on everywhere you walk, it's comfortable, you know, to go. Nothing sticks in your feet, nothing pokes in your feet. So for all of us, we have to identify what are the things that set me off? What are the things that trigger me? We have to identify those things. Like, what are the things that I get really irritated about? You know? The way that when people speak to me in a certain way, with a certain tone of voice, you know, what are the, so for each of us is totally different, right? And we're responsible to identify those things and work on them, right? Think about times in the past when you got really irritated with someone, you got really angry at someone. Why? What was it they did? What was it they said? And what was I thinking? And how can I think differently? How can I think about that experience differently and learn to modify my reaction, learn to react in a different way. Look at it in a different way so that I don't get angry, right? So if we do that, gradually it's like one by one, you know, we can see, you know, it's like playing a video game and there's all these things we have to knock down so that we can kind of get to the end. But for us, to eliminate anger, it's like we have to eliminate all the things that trigger our anger in our own mind, right? So what are all the different things that set me off, and how can I learn to deal with each of those things differently so that it doesn't cause me to get, so that I don't become angry about it, but rather I react with compassion or patience or, you know, or kindness or whatever, with love, affection. So one is, when dealing with anger, one is to see the things that cause us to be disturbed and reduce the kind of the negative like the destructive sort of emotional dramas that we get caught up in. Another is just generate basic positive, you know, loving kindness and affection towards others. The more we just generate you know, a simpler way to deal with anger, but ultimately you have to do both, right? But another simple way to deal with anger is just make like, you know, loving kindness, wishing for others to be happy and well, your default like thought. You know, just practice that all the time. May you be well, may you be happy. You know, when you're riding in the metro, when you're walking in the street, when you're, you know, going to sleep at night, when you're washing in the morning, just think, whenever you see someone, may they be well, may they be well, may they be happy. Generate the thought of loving kindness again and again and again. Then you're so much less prone to be angry. When you are angry, it doesn't last so long. It's much easier to recover from. But you have to especially focus on people who you're most likely to become angry with. You know, if it's your children, or your spouse, or your parents, or your friends, or your neighbors, or whoever. Identify the people you're most likely to become angry with, and especially practice generating loving kindness for those people, right? Because those are the biggest dangers, right, for us. You have a question?
The question is related to this particular scenario. So we are actually getting hurted by the people, right?
We're actually doing what?
Getting hurted by the people. Hurted by the people. So in order to you know, not to react, we actually need to create a good thinking about them, right?
Yes.
So, but still we are feeling uncomfortable when we, you know, again going and meeting the same people, right?
Yeah.
Because they are not changing.
Yeah.
So whether we should completely avoid these people or we have to change ourselves.
Yeah.
Always we have to practice the compassion always.
Sure.
Or we have to avoid those people, you know.
Yeah.
But then yeah, that's the question.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think you asked a similar question earlier, like some weeks or months ago.
Yeah, I think.
Anyway, I mean, it's a good question. I'm happy to answer again. I was just kind of having deja vu. Yeah, I mean, whether you avoid other people or not, well, I mean, one, you have to be practical. Like, if there are people who live in the same house, then of course you can't avoid them, right? But where there's some flexibility and you can make some decisions about whether to, you know, go out with a group of people where that person's going to be there or not, or go to a place where that person is going to be there or not. So where you have some flexibility, then, I mean, ultimately we want to get to a state where we're confident that we can be around anybody and not get angry and not get into negative states of mind and have compassion, loving kindness. But right from the beginning, that's not realistic. Like, there are people that when we're around, like, it's going to be really difficult for us not to get upset. Like, So if we can, yeah, it's better to, reduce the amount of time you're around those people and limit it. Don't be around them so much so that it just overwhelms you. But it's a thing of like trial and error. Sometimes, like for example, I grew up in the United States, so all the people I know there, when I'm in India, I don't see them. Like, I'm in India for 2 or 3 years, I don't see them for that time. And sometimes, in India, I'm around nice people. Like I'm in the monastery, there's a lot of monks. They're nice people. They're easy people to live with, easy people to get along with. Or at Dharma centers, usually it's pretty much nice people. Like so you can easily slip into thinking, oh, I'm so patient now. I don't have much anger anymore. I can deal with anybody. But you forgot about those people that are back. I mean, for me, I forgot about those people that are back in the United States who haven't been around for so long. And then, I've had the experience, and sometimes I go back and think, oh, I can be around them now, no matter whatever they say. It's okay. It doesn't matter. I'll just leave it. Like it won't bother me. But then, you find you forgot how much it bothers you. Then you're with the person again, and you find I got really upset with people that I thought I thought I had built up kind of the tools to deal with, but I hadn't actually. So what I'm saying is trial and error. Be around the person, but if there's someone you find really difficult to be around, and you decide to kind of try not to be around them so much, you still have to work on learning to deal with the kind of challenge that they present to you by thinking about things, interactions you've had with them in the past, and replaying those in your mind. Put yourself in that situation again and practice, role play. Like what would I think when they say that, instead of thinking something that's going to make me really irritated? What is something else I could think, that will help me just deal with them in a peaceful way? Can I find some way to just divert the conversation, or change the, if they have a really negative outlook, kind of bring it around to a positive outlook or something. You have to practice. Yeah.
Something like being scold people.
Cold.
Scold.
Scold. Scold. Yeah, that's not. Again, that's not easy, and it easily. Sometimes it's appropriate, right? But it easily slips into anger. So you really have to be clear and confident that you can have very positive motivation. First of all, try other things first, right? Without scolding. Would you imagine the Buddha scolding people? The Buddha has scolded people, for sure. There's in some sutras.
Don't say that.
Saguti.
That will there be an enlightened being in the last day?
Yeah, but it's a little bit of a scolding. It's quite gentle. Yeah. Even once in Kosambi, I always tell this story. The Kosambi monks. I won't tell the whole story, but anyway, the Kosambi monks were feuding with each other, and then someone asked the Buddha to come give them advice, and the Buddha gave them some advice to bring harmony. And one of them stood up and said, we don't need your advice, basically. Just leave it to us. You just go, meditate peacefully and let us deal with it. 3 times he said that. So then the Buddha said to them, even thieves and bandits and murderers can work together to accomplish their aims. Why can't you? That's pretty harsh, Even bandits and thieves and murderers can work together to accomplish their aims. Why can't you? That's harsh.
Like a father,
but it's harsh. But it's not like he's being abusive, or Of course, it's going to hurt them if they hear it. But it's more like giving in a kind of insightful way, a gentle, kind way, but clear. Anyway, if we can, we want to try to avoid hurting, even with deciding not to be around other people. A problem is because that can be very hurtful to the person. If they realize that we're trying to avoid them, it can be very hurtful to the person, right? So you also want to try to avoid that. You try to find this middle way between. But the thing is, you have to protect your own mind, right? That's foremost. If you see that your mind is really going to be detrimental, your behavior, and therefore, if you're going to become angry and irritated and do and say things that you're going to regret later on, then yeah, that's a reason to avoid being around the person. But then you have to work on your positive strength so that you have the strength to be around the person and not be disturbed. But you have to check when and to what degree you make that kind of progress. Right?
But in some situation, for example, if it's just minor irritations, then maybe you can contain your mind. But sometimes, there are people who are in some toxic relationships.
Yeah.
Toxic and abusive relationships. And it's better to always.
Yeah, and maybe for the whole life, for the rest of your life. There are definitely cases.
In that case, I think that it doesn't mean that you stay in that kind of relationship and just train your mind. No. If you can't, then that's why it helps to have a teacher, to ask what to do. Should I stay in this relationship or not? Because it depends on the karma. But even if you decide not to be around someone, it doesn't mean you give up caring about the person. You should still generate compassion, loving kindness for the person. And we should stop here. We're already over time. So we've gotten up to verse 14. Likewise, it is not possible for me to restrain the external persecutions, but should I restrain this mind of mine, what need to restrain our lives? Yeah, basically that. So we've gotten to verse 14. Okay. So let's dedicate, just briefly. So think of all the positive energy we created. Rejoice in how wonderful it is. So then by the force of this merit, may all of our teachers have long and stable lives. Especially his Holiness the Dalai Lama, may he completely recover from his chest infection and have perfect health and continue to teach us until samsara ends. Especially all of our brothers and sisters sentient beings, from hell beings, hungry ghosts, animals, devas, may they all be free from every form of suffering of body, speech, and mind, and have every happiness of the full enlightenment. And especially all those who have died recently, may they quickly take a precious human rebirth. And everywhere there's war and violent conflict and abuse and oppression in the world, may all beings be free from those. Especially since we've been talking so much about anger, may all beings who have anger in their minds, which propels them to engage in those kind of violent conflicts and abuse, addiction and so forth, relationship problems. May they all find ways to reduce and eliminate anger, the seeds of anger in their minds, and generate boundless minds of loving kindness. And may all of our actions be causes for all of these things to happen. Okay, thank you very much. And I'll do it again.